The birds in your yard already know when you're having a hard day. Not because they can read your mind, because they're reading something more reliable: the way you move. Welcome to Backyard Bird Mind. Subscribe if you're new. Most people believe their birds respond to what they do, whether they approach too fast, whether they're quiet or loud. What they don't know is that the birds are also responding to something beneath all of that: the state you're in when you do it. Every emotional state a person is in changes how they move through space. This is not a poetic claim, it is a documented physiological fact. Stress, anxiety, grief, distraction, frustration, each of these states produces measurable changes in movement kinematics. The speed of a step, the length of a stride, the degree of muscle tension in the shoulders, the arms, the hands, the rhythm of breathing, the amount of involuntary micromovement, the small shifts in weight, the brief pauses, the subtle twitches of attention that a calm person almost entirely suppresses and a stressed person generates constantly. These changes are involuntary. The person experiencing them cannot choose to hide them because they are not generated by the conscious mind. They emerge from the nervous system's response to internal state, and they are expressed in the body, whether the person is aware of them or not. A person who has just received difficult news and walked into the garden 5 minutes later is moving differently, measurably, physically differently than they were moving the day before. The garden looks the same. The feeder is in the same place, but the person filling it is not quite the same person the birds have been classifying as safe, and the bird's instruments are precise enough to register the difference. This is the part most people find surprising, that the birds are not fooled by the ordinary trappings of the routine: the same jacket, the same time of morning, the same seed. None of that is what the birds are measuring. They're measuring something else, something the person cannot curate or perform, which is the quality of the movement itself. Birds are exquisitely sensitive to exactly these kinds of signals. The evolutionary reason is straightforward. Predator detection is one of the most demanding cognitive tasks a prey animal performs. It requires distinguishing between the movement of a non-threatening animal, one that is relaxed, predictable, and not currently focused on the prey, and the movement of a predator that is preparing to hunt. The difference between these two movement profiles is often subtle. A slight increase in directedness, a change in the tempo of approach, a shift in the quality of attention being directed at the bird. Wild animals that could not read these signals accurately did not survive to pass on their genes. Wild animals that could survived, and the sensory systems they developed to do so are present in every bird that visits your feeder. What this means practically is that when you walk into your garden in a state of calm, settled, unhurried, moving at your normal pace and in your normal way, your birds register this as consistent with their classification of you as safe. The movement profile matches what they have come to expect from you. The data is familiar. The threat model is not updated. But when you walk into your garden carrying the physical signature of a difficult day, moving with more tension, more speed, more distraction, more involuntary micro-movement than usual, your birds register the change. They are registering the movement profile as partially inconsistent with the one that has been classified as safe. The deviation from the known pattern triggers a mild elevation of threat assessment. The flight initiation distance increases slightly. The birds stay a little further back. The approach that usually happens within a few minutes takes longer or doesn't happen at all. This is not a large effect under normal circumstances. It is not as dramatic as a sudden movement or a loud noise, but it is real and it is measurable, and it accumulates across interactions. On a good day, a calm morning, unhurried, nothing demanding your attention beyond what is in front of you, the birds in your yard will behave more confidently around you, closer, more quickly, less watchful. On a difficult day, when you are carrying the weight of something that has changed your movement signature, they will behave with slightly more caution, not obviously, just differently. If you've been watching your birds for any length of time, you may have already noticed this without knowing what it was. The days when the yard feels alive, when the birds seem unusually present and close and easy, often correlate with days when you yourself were in a particular state: rested, quiet, genuinely absorbed in what was in front of you rather than what was behind you or ahead. And the days when the yard feels quieter, more distant, less responsive, those sometimes correlate with days that we're carrying something else. This observation is not always accurate because many other variables affect bird behavior, but it is accurate often enough to be worth understanding because it tells you something specific about the relationship between your state of mind and the quality of your time in the garden. If this is the kind of thing that changes how you see your yard, subscribe to Backyard Bird Mind and share this with someone who feeds birds. Every week there is something here that makes the ordinary birds in your yard feel less ordinary. The research that underpins this understanding comes from several directions. Studies of flight initiation distance in urban birds have consistently shown that birds habituate not just to the presence of humans, but to specific behavioral profiles of humans. A person who moves quickly and unpredictably triggers longer flight distances than a person who moves slowly and consistently, even when both people are at the same physical distance. The movement profile is the variable, not the proximity. More specifically, research into how birds distinguish between humans who are paying attention to them and humans who are not has shown that birds are highly sensitive to the direction and quality of a person's gaze and body orientation. A person who is looking at a bird while approaching will cause earlier flushing than a person who is looking elsewhere. A person whose body is tense and whose attention is scattered, the physical posture of someone preoccupied with something, reads differently than a person whose attention is present and whose body is relaxed. These are not large differences in external behavior. They're small differences in quality of presence, but birds detect them reliably because detecting them is part of what keeps birds alive. What this body of research establishes, taken together, is that the birds in your yard are not simply responding to what you do. They're responding to how you are when you do it. And how you are, the quality of your presence, the ease or tension in your body, the degree to which you're genuinely in the garden rather than somewhere else in your head, is something you cannot fake and they cannot miss. This is why experienced birders often describe the feeling of being in the field as something that requires a particular internal quality, a settling of attention, a slowing of internal pace, that is not just about being quiet, but about being a certain way. The external behavior of standing still is only half of it. The other half is the internal state that makes the stillness genuine rather than performed. Birds are not fooled by performed stillness. They're measuring something deeper, and performed stillness that is generated by a tense and distracted nervous system looks different from the genuine article. It moves differently. It breathes differently. It holds itself differently. And the birds who have been reading movement profiles since before humans built gardens register the difference every time. For the person who feeds birds in their garden, this has a particular implication. On the days when you are most available, most unhurried, most able to simply be outside without the pull of whatever is demanding your attention elsewhere, your birds will be most present with you. They are not choosing you in those moments out of affection or preference. They are reading the movement profile you are presenting and finding it consistent with what they know to be safe. But the result from your side of it is that the garden feels most alive precisely when you are most capable of being in it. And on the hard days, the days when something is weighing on you, when the morning feels different from the inside, the birds may seem more distant. They may take longer to come. They may stay further back than usual. If you know why, the meaning of that changes slightly. They are not withholding. They are reading. They are running the same assessment they always run, arriving at a slightly different result because something about you is genuinely different today in ways that are real and physical and not hidden from creatures that have been reading movement profiles for millions of years. There is something quietly affecting about that. Not because birds can feel your pain, they cannot, not in the way another person can, but because the relationship you have built with them in your garden is real enough that when the weight of a day shows up in your body, they notice. The garden knows, even if it can only respond by keeping a little more distance. The garden, in this sense, functions as a kind of honest mirror. It does not reflect what you think you are presenting. It reflects what you are actually presenting, the unedited physical truth of your state on any given morning. On the days when the birds are close and the yard is alive, some part of that is about who you are in that moment, not who you are trying to be, or who you were yesterday, or who you will be later, who you are right now in the specific way your body is carrying that. Most people walk through their gardens without this knowledge. They experience the birds as an external phenomenon, present or absent, responsive or not, for reasons that feel arbitrary and environmental. What the science suggests is that the garden is less external than it seems. The birds in it are reading you, and what they show you on any given morning is in part a reflection of what you brought with you when you came through the gate. On the quiet mornings when everything settles, when the birds are close and the yard is alive and time seems to move differently, remember what is happening. You are not just in a good garden. You are in a good garden because something in you, on that particular morning, made it easier for them to be near you, and they came. Have you ever noticed your birds behaving differently on difficult days, staying further back or not coming at all? Or notice the opposite, a morning when everything felt settled and the birds seemed unusually close? Tell me in the comments what you've seen. Subscribe to Backyard Birdmind if this changed how you'll think about the next morning in your garden, and share this with someone who could use the reminder that the garden is paying attention.